Hey guys, welcome back. We're going to tackle the y-axis today of the CNC router build, which is the third video in this build so far. If you've been following along, you know that we've already completed the x-axis and the z-axis, and the y-axis isn't going to be completely different from what we've already done. We're going to use similar parts to do similar things. The biggest difference is that I haven't pre-constructed the y-axis parts, so I'm going to bring you guys along as I fabricate the parts for the y-axis so you can kind of see the thought process and how we actually make those parts. Okay, the parts we're going to be using in the y-axis build should be familiar to you. First off, we've got our lead screw, which is the 1/2 inch by 10 screw that we used in the x-axis build. We've also got our lead screw nut that we used in the x-axis build, along with the housing we made out of 2-inch square tubing. This will all get mounted to the plate that we mentioned in the z-axis build at the very end. This plate will get mounted to the back of the z-axis. Finally, on either end of the lead screw, we're going to have our NEMA 23 motor, which we used in the x-axis build, along with the coupler that'll join that to the lead screw. And then we've got a bronze bushing that'll go on the other end. This was used in the x-axis, but we didn't put much emphasis on it, and I'll talk a little bit about it during this build. Now the main fabrication we'll be doing is creating the brackets that hold the NEMA 23 motor on one end and the bronze bushing at the other end of the gantry to support the whole y-axis system. We want to make sure that we have those mounted properly so that the lead screw is nice and in line with the lead screw nut so that there's no binding. Let me get out my sketchbook and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Alright guys, here's the sketch. The two parts we're going to be fabricating are this motor mount and this bushing mount over here. This part is already fabricated and the plate has already been fabricated, and we just need to make sure that the lead screw stays in a straight line between all of them. Sorry for the water drops. It's 105 degrees out here in the garage, so I am sweating my butt off. It's so hot. Okay, so you know what we're trying to do now, so let's go fabricate some stuff. As I previously mentioned, I created a mount for the lead screw nut using 2-inch square tubing, but after some trial fitting I realized there wasn't a great way to mount it to the plate on the back of the Z-axis. Instead, I opted for a 3D printed option that allowed me to incorporate the mounting flange, as well as multiple points to mount limit switches. Okay, as you can see, I had to make a little bit of a revision there because of a mistake I made. When I was designing these motor mounts, I mounted the motor a little too close to the cross member bolts, which are these holes right here. And when I placed that motor mount up onto the vertical upright there, you can see that the bolts that hold the motor in place actually dig into the vertical, so I had to notch that a bit. So when you're doing your build, make sure you account for those motor bolts when you're designing your motor mount. Final step is add some lock washers and nuts to the back plate of the Z-axis. Well, that concludes the Y-axis build. Just need to tighten up a few nuts and bolts and this thing will be ready to go. That also concludes the mechanical portion of the CNC. We've got one more video in the build series focusing on the electronics, specifically the limit switches and some of the wire routing, and I'll link to a YouTube video that talks about the stepper motor controllers, the computer interface, and the overall control of the CNC. If you like this video, make sure you check out the rest of the build videos as well as additional content at my Patreon page, patreon.com/RickyCrum. Thanks guys, see you in the next one.